So we're going to follow my own instructions here, my own simple recipe for making pizza dough. First up, we're going to get a little bit of warm water. In there we have 300 millilitres of warm water. It's hand hot, which is essentially what I'd like to refer to as blood temperature. So if you cut yourself, it's the temperature your blood will come out at. In there we need to pop a little bit of yeast. This is just normal yeast you get out of, you buy it in the shops in a small packet. I buy it in a big packet, hence the reason why it's in a tub. We're going to drop in about 8 grams there. If you're a gram over, gram under, doesn't matter too much really. If you go a couple of grams extra, it's banging, it's going to go mad. So we've got that in there. We're going to reset our scales. We want, same again, 8 grams of sugar. Nothing fancy. This is literally sugar that you chuck in your tea. Oh, look at that. Perfect. Oh no, a bit more. Cha-cha-cha. 8 grams. I know some people insist on using honey or some other nonsense. Forget that nonsense. Straight in there. Give it a little whisk. Whisk. You need to make sure all of that sugar and all that yeast dissolves completely, like that. And I'm going to take that away, pop it over on the side. We're going to let that froth up. So whilst we're waiting for our yeast to do its thing and get all fizzy, we're going to take our bowl. I'm going to make my dough on a machine because I'm lazy and I can't be bothered to roll it around on the tabletop. So we want about 500 grams of good strong flour. If you haven't got strong flour, it's fine. You can probably get away with just standard plain flour, but strong flour, if you're doing anything bread based, is what you want. So let's reset our scales. Let's drop. Let's see her go up. Again, you're probably wondering why I've got my flour in a plastic bag. It's because I buy big bags of it and it comes in plastic bags instead of in the paper ones that you get at the shops. So we've got 518 grams there. That's not going to worry us. Let's reset our scales. We need some salt. I think my recipe says about 10 grams. So essentially, if ever you're making bread or anything, a good staple to go with is about 10 grams per 500 grams of flour. So let's pop that lot in there. 11 grams, bingo. Next, we want to reset our scales again. I'm not going to measure the oil, I'm just going to do it from weight. So we want about 70, 80 mils in there. So that coincidentally weighs about the same. So let's go for, let's say 80, 90, perfect. That'll do. Finish with the scales for a moment. We've got our yeast, it's still doing its thing over there. We'll give it another froth up, a little whizzy, just to make sure it's getting mixed on in. What's happening in that yeast there at the minute is it's all starting to get activated, it's all getting frothy, all the carbon dioxide is coming up and it's doing its thing. So in this bowl we have got our strong flour, we've got our salt and our oil. We're just going to go mix. Because we're making pizza bases, we want a little bit of pepper because it's nice. No other reason, if you don't like pepper, don't put it in. Literally, a couple of twists. 6 for me. And again, we're going to give it another mix. This mix that we're doing here, we're going to use it for a Romana pizza, which is really, it's just a really thin, crunchy base. So if you can get a bit more oil into it, the better. So that yeast there, you can see she's frothing up a little bit. She's not quite there yet. So we're going to give her another 5 minutes and we'll come back. So our yeast has done its business. You can see the top of it there. You've got some bubbles forming. That means it's definitely getting on with it. So quite simply, we're just going to sling that in the bowl. Add all of our flour, salt and oil in it. A bit of pepper. Give it a mix. So it's just loosely mixed together. If you were doing this by hand, this is the point where you'd probably tip it out onto your surface, put a little bit of oil down. Most people say flour your bench. Don't flour your bench. Pop a bit of oil down. It won't stick to it. So that is all pushed together. Beautiful. I'm going to go and chuck this on the mixer. Give it about 5 or 6 minutes at a medium speed. And then it should be all combined together. And then we'll come back. I'm going to have to turn this off if I'm going to talk. So this has been on there for about a minute or so maybe. You can see already I've got nice clean sides. All of it's all coming together in a ball. So we're going to pop that back on. Again, you don't need a super fancy mixer or anything. This is just, it's Kenwood, but it's your cheapest, bottom of the range, about 150 quid. It literally will make anything. It makes the best mashed potatoes. You can make bread with it, make your cakes, whip the cream, bang. So let's chuck this on, pop her up to about number 6 and leave it for another 5 minutes. So here we are, 5 minutes later, we've got our dough, it's still in the bowl, still got the dough hook attached. So we've got a little bit of olive oil here, we're going to splash that over the top of there. And also, we've got a little silver bowl here, stainless steel, silver, aluminium, whatever. That's what I always prefer because things just don't stick to it. So let's put a little bit of oil in the bottom of that. We're going to take our hand, we're going to slap it in there, get it nice and greased up. Cool. Push it out of the way. The dough hook's still in here. The beauty is that because you've got a greased finger now, the hook quite happily pops out. Pop her in the sink for later. See, if you look at your dough here, this is exactly what you want. She's nice and stretchy. She's got really, really, really good texture to her. So we're going to take that. I know, I like to put a little mini seam on the bottom of it. So let's stretch, 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 stretch. Grab it by the bottom, push it all together, and then give it a little twist. We're going to pop that in the bowl. I'm going to roll it around with the oil first as well. Turn her over, seams on the bottom. We're going to literally chuck her on the side and leave her 45 minutes, maybe an hour or so until she's about doubled in size. It's a little bit to do with atmospherics. If it's too hot, don't go putting it on top of the oven. Some people do, put it near a hot saucepan. Nonsense. You're going to kill the yeast and it's never going to rise. So yeah, room temperature, absolutely perfect. You can even do it overnight in the fridge. If you really push for time, you can do this one day, cover it over with some cling film or something, pop it in the fridge, and it will just ferment really slowly. But yeah, about an hour at any old room temperature. So we'll see you in an hour. So here we are. You can see the dough here. She's nicely risen. We're going to knock her back a little bit. So you've got two options. You can either go with your dough straight from here, which is what I'm going to do today, but if I had a little bit more time in my hands and I didn't have 4 hungry children, I'd actually leave that to probably rise again for about another 20 minutes or so before I cut it up. But in this instance, we're going to go straight from rising to knocking back and turning straight into pizza bases. So I think I'm going to try and squeeze 7 out of there. I'm going to have a little go. But yeah, normally probably get about 6 out of this recipe. So that's 500 grams of flour is your base. So do you know what? We'll stick with 6. There we go. So put it into a rough sort of like sausage shape, I'm sure you could call it, or a bread loaf shape. There we go. So we're just going to go in half first. If you're really pedantic, you can weigh these out, but we're not going to. Let's take each one into 3. 1, 2, 3, and again 1, 2, 3. They're going to be roughly the same size. So again, a bit like we did earlier, we're going to take the dough, you're going to like roll it into a ball, pull it a little bit. If you can pull it to a little bit of a seam on the bottom. We're now going to put one in each hand, and we're going to just do this with them. Rolly, 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 rolly. You don't want to go too tight. You want them to basically roll around inside your hands, and then, as if by magic, you've got 2 perfectly shaped pizza pucks. So pop those there, pop those there. And do the same with the next 2. Again, lots of people will swear by flouring up their board. They'll put polenta on it, they'll put semolina on it. All of those ways of doing it are perfectly good. They're all just slightly different. I love oil. Oil in my pizza base is what keeps it crispy and what keeps it moist. So all I've done is use a little bit of oil on the board, plus the oil that was in the pan, and that's it. And it's just slippery as can be. The problem is if you use too much flour on your bench, you're going to end up drying out your pizza base, and it'll be crispy, but it won't have that wonderful moisture to it. So same again, we'll go as a quick roll around, and we have got 6 pieces of pizza dough. So because we're doing this at home, we're going to get our things pre-prepped. We've got our piece of parchment paper there, silicone paper, non-stick baking paper. It goes by many names. I'm going to put a little bit of oil on there. Take your pizza dough, throw it on there, roll it around, turn it over, roll it around again, squash it down, squash, 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 squash. Again, people throw their pizzas up in the air, they roll it round. You can even get pizza rolling machines. All we're going to do is put a piece of paper on the top. It's going to give my hands a quick dry because they're almost too slippery. And rolling pin, we're going to roll. Turn the whole thing around. I'm going to press it down, because the trick is you really want to get this pizza dough as thin as you can. So look at that, you see it stretching back. That's the gluten. All that wonderful gluten stuff. Not so wonderful if you're celiac, but that is what gives you that wonderful texture that you get in bread when those gluten strands get really stretched. So we're just going to roll. Turn the whole thing over. Look at that, look how thin it is. And the nice thing is, you don't need to worry about it being completely uniform either. You don't want it to be just like a shop bought pizza base. You want to have a little bit of character to it. So push it the other way now. I'm going to push that out. She is beautifully thin. Look at that. See? It's going to contract a little bit as the gluten strands start to roll back in again. But that is a bang on pizza base. I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to flip her over just to make sure she's sitting pretty. Look at that. It's almost translucent in some places. And because we're going to get a few of these ready, the trick is take your paper, put your paper on top, and that is that one. We're going to put this one off to the side. We're going to roll out our next pizza base. We're just going to stack them up. Once you've done that, you can chuck them in the fridge for as long as you want, a couple of days, something really, or you can freeze them. You can get these ready any time, chuck them in your freezer. Christ, if you do like a double batch, you can make a dozen at a time. Put them out, homemade pizzas, rainy day, bosh, done. Happy. So oil on there, paper on the top again, squash. You see that? Let's give it a bit of a press. So there's no fanciness to this. There's no art form really. It is literally acting like a kid with your Play-Doh. You're going to roll it, you're going to press it, you're going to push it out. And again, you don't want a perfectly round shape. That is boring. Round pizzas, they're for Pizza Hut. They can stay in Pizza Hut. So turn it over again. You can just see how thin that is getting. Absolutely bang on. So let's peel this top piece off. Look at that, beautiful thin pizza base. So we've got our first one over here. She goes on there, and we're literally going to peel that first piece of paper off, drop the next one on top, good to go. And the beauty is, because this paper is non-stick, you're never going to have a problem. So I'm going to turn off for a second. I'm going to roll up the rest of the pizza doughs, and I shall see you shortly.